Two worlds, two minds born oceans apart, yet both searching for the same truth. Socrates, the philosopher of Athens, who believed wisdom begins by admitting ignorance, and LaoTzu, the sage of ancient China, who taught that true knowing is forgetting what you think you know. Across time and language, their voices meet not to argue, but to understand what it truly means to be human. In this imagined dialogue, reason meets stillness, and East meets West, as the ancient questions return once more. What is wisdom? How should we live? And where does truth truly begin?
Humans are the only beings who can step outside themselves and ask, what do I truly know? How should I live? Most wander through life half asleep, never questioning their beliefs or choices. Our ability to examine ourselves, that's what sets us apart from the beasts. Yet the deeper we look, the more we realize how little we actually understand. That realization, the honest acceptance of our ignorance, is where wisdom begins. A life without reflection is a life lived on instinct alone, no different from an animal chasing its next meal.
Humans have drifted far from their natural way. We are born pure, flowing in harmony with the Tao, effortless, simple, free. But as we grow, we start creating rules, desires, and endless thoughts that pull us away from our true selves. Watch a child or an animal, they act without hesitation, guided perfectly by instinct. The tragedy of humanity is that we think too much, always trying to figure life out, when the real secret is to return to simplicity, to flow like water without forcing anything.
So our power to think, is it a gift or a curse? It's a blessing, of course, but most misuse it. I've seen countless people chase wealth and honor while their souls decay. Yes, thought can create confusion, but abandoning thought is no answer. When we fail to question our beliefs, we become slaves to the opinions of others. We call it instinct, but it's just obedience to the crowd. True inquiry cuts through illusion. It separates what truly matters from what only seems to.
You're right that people are trapped by illusions, but your endless questioning builds new cages made of words and ideas. I've seen scholars argue about virtue for years, while a farmer who knows nothing of philosophy feeds his family with quiet kindness. The Tao doesn't demand that we stop thinking or follow others. It calls us to return to what is natural, to quiet the restless mind and listen to a deeper wisdom beyond logic, one that knows how to act without needing a reason.
But how can we trust this natural wisdom? A farmer may love his children yet still harm others because of what he was taught. Without self-examination, we can't tell the difference between genuine goodness and blind tradition. Questioning isn't about adding confusion, it's about uncovering truth. A person who never doubts their own beliefs is not free. They're simply living by habits passed down from others.
You mistake the cure for the sickness. The violent farmer or the reckless soldier you mention, they've already left the Tao. They follow man-made rules of power and pride, not the natural way. The answer isn't to think more, it's to think less. A tree doesn't question how to grow, yet it never grows wrong. When humans live in harmony with the Tao, they act with compassion and clarity, without analysis, without struggle.
But we are not trees, we live through choice. Each moment demands decisions, to lie or tell the truth, to be kind or cruel. If we simply follow our nature, which part should we trust, our anger or our pity? Without reason, we just obey the loudest emotion. And the loudest impulse is often the worst. The unexamined life doesn't lead to wisdom, only to chaos ruled by desire.
That conflict you describe, anger versus pity, exists only when the mind has already left its center. When one truly flows with the Tao, there's no inner war. The strong emotion you fear comes from artificial wants, from the noise of a world obsessed with possession and control. Stop feeding those desires with constant analysis. and they fade on their own. The Tao doesn't force us to choose between impulses. It dissolves the conflict entirely.
If the Tao dissolves all conflict, why do you still argue with me? Even silence is a form of choice. You either act or refrain, and both shape the world. To live is to decide. And every decision reveals our understanding of good and evil. If you claim that the Tao makes all things flow without judgment, then what becomes of justice? If a tyrant harms the weak, do we flow with that too?
You mistake stillness for inaction. Water appears soft, but it can wear down stone. The one who follows the Tao doesn't ignore injustice. He responds in harmony, not in anger. He doesn't fight chaos with more chaos. When you try to force justice, you create resistance. When you embody balance, the disorder corrects itself. The tyrant will fall, not because we destroy him, but because his own imbalance consumes him.
That sounds poetic, but in practice it's dangerous. If everyone simply waits for balance, evil will rule unopposed. It is through questioning, debate, and action that society improves. Philosophy is not passivity, it is the medicine of the soul. Just as the physician uses reason to cure the body, the philosopher uses reason to heal the world. To stand silent before injustice is to side with the oppressor.
And yet, the more medicine you use, the sicker the patient becomes. When rulers multiply laws, thieves multiply too. When teachers spread doctrines, confusion spreads faster. The world does not need more noise of the clever, it needs the quiet of the wise. True balance cannot be forced through argument. It arises naturally when people live simply, when hearts are clear, when action comes from stillness.
Simplicity can be noble, but ignorance is no virtue. A wise person must act when knowledge reveals what's wrong. If I see a child about to fall into a well, I don't wait for balance, I run to save him. Action guided by thought is not arrogance, it's duty. Philosophy teaches responsibility, not retreat. We must use reason not to dominate the world, but to protect it from the blindness of passion and chance.
You save the child because your heart moves before your mind commands it. That is the Tao, not a calculation, but a natural compassion. The instant you analyze why you acted, you step away from the purity of that act. Reason should serve feeling, not replace it. When you trust the flow of life, you no longer need to justify your kindness. It arises effortlessly like breath.
Perhaps, but what about the times when feeling leads astray? A soldier may kill for love of his country. A zealot may destroy for love of his God. Emotion alone cannot be trusted. Only through reasoned reflection can we test whether our actions are just. Feeling is the flame, thought is the lantern that gives it shape. Without the lantern, the fire burns everything.
And when the lantern grows too bright, it blinds the one holding it. You see, wisdom is not found in more thinking, but in knowing when to stop. The greatest leaders act without claiming to lead. The greatest minds know when to unlearn. The Tao is not against reason. It's the silence that reason returns to when it's done its work.
Then maybe we are not so different. You speak of silence, I of questioning. But perhaps both seek the same end. To free the soul from illusion. For me, truth is born through dialogue. Through words that sharpen the mind. For you, truth blossoms in stillness. Through the calm beyond words. Different doors, same home.
Yes, the Tao has no single gate. Some arrive through thought, others through silence. The river and the well both reach the same water. In the end, wisdom is not to conquer or explain life, but to dwell in it fully, without fear, without pride, like a leaf carried gently by the wind.
Strange, isn't it? After all the speaking, questioning, reasoning, comparing, I feel as though I understand less than when we began. Every answer opens another door. And behind that door, only more questions. Perhaps truth is not a destination at all, but a movement, a conversation that never ends. Maybe wisdom is not found in what we say, but in what remains after words fall silent.
You have touched the gate. When words fade, truth appears. The Tao cannot be spoken, because once it is named, it is no longer the Tao. The highest knowing is not knowing. To see without defining. To act without claiming. To be without clinging. When the mind grows quiet, life itself becomes the teacher.
Then perhaps my endless questioning was only a way to reach that same quiet. I searched for truth in argument, but maybe truth lives in the silence between our words. The space where meaning breathes. Not in speech but in awareness. Still I cannot abandon the search. For questioning is how my soul remembers that it does not yet know. Maybe in that humility, we both walk the same path.
Yes, to know that you do not know, that is already to return. The Tao welcomes the seeker and the silent alike. You question, I observe. Both are movements of the same wind. What blinds man is not ignorance, but the belief that he has seen enough. When you stop grasping at meaning, meaning begins to reveal itself.
So in the end we meet not through agreement, but through surrender. Not by proving but by listening. Perhaps that is the true wisdom. To live the question. To let each day be a teacher. And to meet each soul as if it carries a piece of the answer I seek.
Then listen deeply. To the wind, to the stillness, to the sound of your own breath. The Tao is not far, it is what allows you to hear. When the seeker disappears, the truth no longer hides. In the end, there is no Socrates, no LaoTzu. Only the flow. Only the quiet, returning home.
The debate fades, but the silence remains. In that silence, perhaps both men were right. Wisdom is not found in endless questioning, nor in blind acceptance, but in the space between, where thought becomes still and truth breathes on its own. Maybe being human is simply this: to seek with the mind and rest with the heart. To speak until speech no longer serves. To live until life itself becomes the answer. Their debate had not ended with victory or defeat, for neither man had sought to win. What they had found was something far rarer: a glimpse into the shared nature of all who search. For what is philosophy, if not the eternal dialogue between doubt and harmony, between the restless fire of reason and the quiet stream of acceptance? The world around them seemed to listen, as if every leaf, every ripple, every grain of dust had been waiting for this moment of stillness. Socrates spoke of questioning, of the endless hunger of the mind that refuses to rest. LaoTzu answered with silence, for silence too can be a teacher. And in that silence, Socrates understood that wisdom was not a mountain to be conquered, but a river to be followed. One that bends, disappears, and returns again. Never grasped, never owned, yet always present for those who dare to follow its flow. Thousands of years later, the echoes of their words still drift through human thought. We, the inheritors of their questions, walk through cities of glass and circuits, believing ourselves far from the ancient dust. Yet the same doubts remain. What is the right way to live? What does it mean to know? Where does peace truly begin? In a world where noise has become the default language, their conversation becomes a mirror. We see ourselves in Socrates, endlessly seeking, endlessly unsatisfied, craving truth in a labyrinth of information. And we see ourselves in LaoTzu, longing for simplicity, for the kind of stillness that the modern world has forgotten. Socrates teaches us to question the world, but LaoTzu reminds us to question the one who questions. Socrates lights the fire of intellect. LaoTzu pours water on it, not to extinguish, but to temper the flame, so that it warms rather than burns. They are not opposites. They are the two wings of the same bird. And humanity cannot fly without both. If Socrates were alive today, he would walk through the neon lights of the modern city and ask the same questions to those glued to their glowing screens. He would not judge, but probe gently. Do you live as you believe? Or do you believe as you are told? And if LaoTzu were among us, he would not speak much. He might simply sit beneath a tree in the park, watching the chaos unfold, and smile, for he would see that the Tao still flows, even through the circuits of machines and the hearts of restless men. Humanity today stands at the same crossroad, where Socrates and LaoTzu once met, between thinking and being, between knowing and understanding. The modern mind has multiplied its knowledge, but the heart still starves for wisdom. We invent, we build, we connect, yet we forget how to simply exist. Our cities rise higher, but our spirits sink deeper beneath their shadows. We know how to reach the stars, but not how to find peace within ourselves. That is why their ancient dialogue matters still. Because it was never about Greece or China, about East or West. It was about us, the eternal human, caught between heaven and earth, reason and surrender, ambition and stillness. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But LaoTzu might whisper in return, "The over-examined life forgets how to live." And somewhere between their voices lies the balance that the world still seeks. The balance between knowing and being, between asking and accepting, between striving and resting. If you listen carefully, you can still hear them. In every philosopher who questions, in every monk who meditates, in every artist who creates without reason, in every child who asks why before the world teaches them to stop. Their dialogue never truly ended. It simply changed form, passing from generation to generation, like a hidden melody beneath the noise of civilization. It is there when a scientist stares into the unknown and feels wonder instead of fear. It is there when someone pauses before responding and chooses understanding over pride. It is there when a person looks at the chaos of the world and decides to be kind anyway. That is the living echo of wisdom. Perhaps that is what it means to awaken. Not to escape the world, but to see it clearly. Not to abandon thought, but to understand its limits. Not to silence questions, but to let them guide us towards stillness, where no answer is needed, because the experience itself is enough. When the mind bows before the mystery, and the heart finds peace in uncertainty, then the human spirit rises again, not as a conqueror of truth, but as its humble companion. The sun sank slowly beyond the mountain ridge. LaoTzu opened his eyes and smiled faintly. Socrates lowered his gaze and returned the smile. Neither spoke. They didn't need to, for the conversation had already moved beyond words. And as night descended, the wind carried their silence across the valleys, over oceans, through centuries, until it reached us. Now it is our turn to listen. To listen not with ears, but with the quiet space within, where thought fades and understanding blooms. Maybe that is where all wisdom begins. Not in temples or libraries, but in the gentle moment, when the heart and the mind finally stop arguing and begin to move as one.